number 100 of the KH-Vids Podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna play victory fanfare right there, just so you guys
okay.
know. Yeah. So
The power of editing.
yeah. So with us today, you have your usual podcast hosts of myself, Misty.
And me, libregkd.
And me, Calxiyn.
As our staff guest, we have...
Plums again.
Yay, again. And we have a very special member guest, and they are...
I've forgotten my username. I actually have. Peace and War, Ross, hello.
Yay!
Sorry about that.
It's really exciting to have Ross here today because he used to be the host of the KH-Vids Podcast before we overthrew him. And we tried to get... Yeah. We tried to get Sabby on the podcast as well, but she's in Hong Kong, I think looking at, like, Transformers statues based on her Twitter. So, I mean, that's just where she is right now, and that's why she's missing out on this. So, in honor of our 100th episode of the KH-Vids Podcast, we're going to be talking about the KH-Vids Podcast. Talking about, like, our history and where we've been, where we're going, that kind of thing. And so it'll be really exciting, or really boring if this is the first episode of the podcast that you're listening to and you have no emotional attachment to it. But first off, we're going to talk about Kingdom Hearts news and updates like always. This is like barely news, but Nomura was doing an interview about the Final Fantasy VII Remake that's coming out, and he talked a little bit about Kingdom Hearts 3 because apparently this poor guy can't sit for an interview without being asked about Kingdom Hearts 3. And what he basically said is that they've established the groundwork of the game, the basic systems and mechanics of what it's going to be, and that they're building resources now and developing the mass elements of it, like the areas and mini games and that kind of thing. They're still in some planning phase. It's just like the game is in development. I feel so bad for him because he just has to keep saying like, yeah, we're working on it. Like, what the f*** do you want to hear? And there goes my promise to not swear on this podcast.
Good start.
Yeah. So, like, Kingdom Hearts 3 is in development. Shock.
There was another thing put up by Nova Crystallis that said, Norma in an interview said there are no plans to bring Kingdom Hearts HD remixes to the PS4.
I did see that today, but I think that that's mostly bullshit because I think we know otherwise.
That's number two.
Yeah, I don't believe it at all either, but that is something he said in an interview, so... He
might just be saying, like, there's nothing, like, set in stone, but we all know it's happening. We all know it's going to happen.
Maybe we'll get it next week. Gamescom, woo.
I don't think Gamescom. I think maybe D23. Now that it didn't happen at E3, I think D23.
Yeah, I mean, Gamescom seems to be Square's big, like, hey, we're going to throw everything out there with our, like, 17 different YouTubers who are just going to play Final Fantasy 15 on stages for you all.
But see, they released that list of games that would be appearing at Gamescom, and I didn't see Kingdom Hearts on it at all.
No,
of course,
I didn't see that list.
Oh, well, of course, if they were going to be announcing the HD remixes coming to the PS4, like, it would give it away if they listed, like, things appearing at Gamescom, Kingdom Hearts 1.5, then we'd be like, oh, well, it's happening. So if they want it to be a surprise, obviously they wouldn't list it there, but, again, we all know it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah, it's either, if it's not Gamescom, then D23 or TGS or
yeah.
something.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about TGS. TGS is a big possibility, too.
Yeah, I think that's where the actually first remix for the PS3 got announced, so...
That sounds right to me. I feel like we've had this conversation several times before, and we've always been like, yeah, TGS, that sounds correct.
Yeah, I think I want to say that is the case.
Yeah, KH-Vids Podcast, we definitely know our here. Number 3.
Oh, you did that one on purpose.
No, I did not. It just happens. This is the way I talk. Stop censoring me, KH-Vids.Net. Yeah, okay. So... So, like I said, in honor of our 100th episode, we're going to be talking about the KH-Vids Podcast today. And to start off, I will give a brief history lesson of the KH-Vids Podcast. So, the idea...
History lesson.
The idea, honestly, was thrown around for, like, years. Like, I think the first mention of starting a KH-Vids Podcast was, like, 2007 or 2008. And it was hard to get it off the ground because...
Years.
Yeah. Oh, yes. It was hard to get it off the ground because, like, doing a podcast is a lot of work, and you need somebody that's going to be like, I am committed to this, and I'm spearheading everything, and we just didn't have that person until Sabby rolled around in... Well, I mean, Sabby's been here for a long time, but it was 2010 that she started the podcast with Mike and DP Wolf, who were both former staff members. They did episodes kind of irregularly, like they tried for every month, but that didn't really happen, and the hosts varied a lot, like Sabby, Mike, and even I once or twice would act as the main host, and the rest of the participants would be like a collection of staff and member guests. It was mostly like reactionary, like when something big happens in Kingdom Hearts, which doesn't happen that often, they would do an episode, but it wasn't like anything regular. Not to bash them, they were good episodes and everything, that was just how it was done. In 2012, Ross, who's here today, took over the podcast.
That's my name.
Yeah. And so, Ross, do you want to talk a little bit about doing the podcast? If you remember anything?
If you remember.
Tell us about your first-hand experiences 3 years ago.
Well, I try to suppress them, but, I have to talk to them with my counselor, obviously. Dark times they were, dark times. I can't actually remember kind of how I started to take it over, I suppose, where the handoff
Sabby
went.
left, I think.
Yeah, but I think there might have been a bit of... Because obviously I talked to Sabby quite a bit back then, and I talked about the podcast because I liked it, and I think I'd been on it before at that point as a guest.
You had been.
Say what?
You had been. I'm just confirming that.
Oh, okay. Wow, you did your research here.
I did.
And I guess after that I kind of wanted to contribute a bit more because I like the community and I just wanted to get a bit more involved, and that was one way of doing it. And as I got to know Sabby a bit more, she just kind of went, do you want to take it over? I think this is how it happened. And yeah, I just went, sure, yeah, I'd love to.
So obviously this is a very grand and formal occasion. Do you want to take it over? Yeah, I guess I can do that.
I mean, there was a golden microphone that was handed to me. I was kneeled down, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think it just kind of happened. And then once I had my grabby mitts onto the podcast, I just kind of went my own way. I probably tried to keep it similar to as it was before, but I definitely wanted to make it more frequent and tried to get a bit more of a structure about it because, I mean, as you say, it was a bit like there was no sort of set time when things usually came out. It was generally random. I mean, occasionally you'd get like, a month, a couple months between each other equally, but then after that, you'd have, 4 or 5 of just nothing. So I kind of wanted to keep it a lot more regular and try and get a lot more people involved. So I know it was kind of kept to one sort of general group of staff members who came on, and I wanted to try and get as many different staff members. Eventually I wanted to get every single one of them that was there at the time to get on and have a go, as well as getting more members involved to get them interested and hopefully actually make sure that people were actually listening to us. So yeah, that's kind of what I remember earliest anyway.
That's always the big question. Do people actually listen to the podcast? And it still kind of haunts me today. Like, we have a regular group of commenters and everything. It's always there in the back of my mind. It's like, do people listen to this? I think they do. I hope that they
I mean, it is. I mean, this is a niche within a niche, really.
It is.
And KH-V, unfortunately, is not the biggest of Kingdom Hearts sites. I would say, I don't know if that's true or not. So I suppose it's just the committed forum goers that are mainly here. But I suppose you get some drop-ins and drop-outs.
No, we have actually had people saying, like, oh yeah, I do listen to the Kingdom Hearts podcast, like people that are not involved with KH-Vids much at all. They say, like, yeah, we listen to it because it's basically like the only Kingdom Hearts podcast that is updated as frequently as it is. Like, the other one is the Kingdom Hearts Final Fantasy Union podcast, but they do, I think, an episode every month, and they switch off between Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts. Which is not to knock them or anything. It's a fine podcast. I listen to it sometimes, and it's hard doing a podcast all the time about Kingdom Hearts. And case in point,
Don't endorse them. That's the competition.
I'm not part of this competition world. I love everyone, and I want everyone to be happy and play together in utopia. But
I left the podcast in bad hands.
Yeah, so unfortunately Ross did abandon the podcast. eventually.
Yes,
But
I think I did literally just kind of go, Cash, you can do it, right? Yeah, good, bye.
You didn't even, like, ask that. I mean, at that point, I had, like, hosted a couple episodes, and I think I edited a couple for you, and when you left, I was kind of like, well, I guess, yeah, but we'll talk about that more later. To focus more on Ross's time with the podcast, I want to ask him what his favorite and least favorite things about doing the podcast were.
Memory, how elusive you are. Is it bad that I can kind of record bad things? I suppose
if you just want to bitch and moan about how terrible doing the podcast is, that's absolutely fine.
I mean, I think it's more like, I mean, this is going to sound selfish and petty and sort of needy, but I suppose I don't feel like the worst part was that just generally I don't feel like many people, if really any, kind of cared about the amount of effort I put into it at the time. Anyway, it was sort of like I was trying to keep everything fresh, interesting, entertaining, and trying to make it personable with the community, as well as trying to keep things regularly. So when I kind of put quite a lot of effort, at least at the time, I mean, like, compared to nowadays, I probably do a lot more work with stuff that is, you know, not as bad as the podcast was. But at the time, it felt like, no, I mean, anyway, I just kind of like, that was not my whole entire life, but like a lot of time I spent doing the podcast, I felt like, oh, well, this isn't really, you know, getting to many people. It's not really doing much for them. So that was kind of a tough part. But in terms of worst experiences, was it worst experiences with the podcast?
Best and worst, but I guess you can talk about all worst.
No. I'll get to the good parts. But one of the worst, which is probably more the toughest thing, was when I did the KH trivia stuff.
Okay.
Which basically were a series of podcasts with members competing against each other in Kingdom Hearts knowledge. And one of the worst things about all that was not only trying to organise it, because I had something like, I was trying to do it in the space of a month with 12 people maybe in total, including myself in that. 10 people, I think. And I had to get all the questions in time, which numbered, I had to do the maths, and I numbered about 200 questions in the end, and it was just so much bloody effort, so much work, and the post-editing stuff, because in the episodes I put buzzers in for each person, so it took me hours to edit all that stuff in, that it was kind of more natural and sounded like it fit in properly and wasn't, you know, bugging up the audio. And that was probably one of the toughest things I've done in terms of sort of media, just in general. It was just a mammoth amount of tasks for me, but yeah.
No, I know, because you made me edit one of those episodes.
Did I? Oh,
yeah, because I remember I spent like probably a solid 2.5 hours on the internet just looking for buzzer noises.
Oh yes, I remember. Yeah. Oh yeah, it was a terrible thing to try and like fit together around general life, and yeah, doing like 4 of those was yeah. But in terms of best experiences, I suppose I got to kind of talk to a lot of people that I never kind of would have generally, and I had a good time. I can't deny. I always look forward towards hosting podcasts and doing stuff and talking to people, because, you know, I loved the community and interacting with everyone. So yeah, and it was also great having feedback. So it was always nice having something to do and realising that there were people, even if I probably selfishly wanted thousands of more of them, that there were people dedicated and liked the stuff I was doing, which was just nice. So yeah.
And I think that the big question that we're going to grill you on is, do you still listen to the podcast?
Well, I mean, officially, in my mind, it died when I left.
Wow,
so...
okay.
Thanks for that.
It died and it was never resurrected. This is just a simple chat we're having right now.
This is a sham. This is not the real KH-Vids podcast.
It's a shadow of its former self. I did when I first kind of left, but there was some sort of, without going into it, I suppose, raw emotions that were kind of evoked after listening to a few of the first podcasts after moi left. And so I kind of only listened to a couple, and then I thought I can't really listen to this again. But I have listened to it infrequently. I know I listened to the E3 stuff because that was one actually mentioning like best times. One of the best times was always talking about E3 because I just spent basically hours talking to people about great stuff to do with games, and especially Kingdom Hearts stuff whenever it did come out. So yeah, I did listen to the last one before this, just pretty much to prep myself. But yeah, I'm an infrequent listener, I suppose.
The honest answer. That's all that I could have expected. Not, yes, I listen to every episode and relentlessly comment and love it and promote it to my friends.
I'm not going to give you false hope.
Not even for old time's sake, Ross. Yeah, but okay, so starting in March of last year, at episode 39, myself, libregkd, and Yave took over the podcast and made some really big changes. Probably the most notable one is that we now do podcasts every week. And,
or try to.
I don't know how, but yeah. I suppose the time zone thing helps.
I'm fuzzy on how we do it myself. So that was March of last year, and we've basically done weekly episodes since then. Like, we missed last week, we missed a couple of weeks, but yeah, we've pretty much kept to that weekly thing, and I'm shocked.
There's reasons why we've done over 60 episodes.
Yeah, we're at just number 100 now.
I suppose. Yeah. I mean, I don't think... Yeah, like I said, I would never have been able to do that. Nope.
We also had a set group of hosts. Like, now I say, you have your usual hosts of myself, Misty, and me, libregkd, and everything. And then we have a regular format as well. If you guys don't notice, we go Kingdom Hearts news and updates, then our topic for the day, then user-submitted questions, then community news and projects. And that honestly came about because when I took over the podcast, I listened back to the old episodes. Not that I hadn't listened to them before. I always listen to the podcast, but I listened back to them and I did. I'm not fucking around with that. I did actually listen to the podcast all the time. Yeah.
Whatever.
Okay. What was I gonna say? You distracted me now.
You listened to the old podcast.
Yes, I listened to the old podcast episodes, and then I compared them.
Yeah, that is pretty forgettable.
I kind of compared them against the podcasts that I listen to now and said, okay, so what are we missing here? And one of those things was kind of a structure, I think it's hard to listen to a podcast sometimes when it's just an hour of let's flow through this conversation and not have any kind of direction or set anything. And so I'm trying not to bang the old. I'm trying not to take pot shots at the old episodes or anything. I do think that the old episodes are fine and great.
You asked me on the episode just to hurl
just to insult you, yeah. But you hurt me too by telling me that you don't listen to the podcast, so it's okay.
Hey. I do, kind of.
Yeah, so I wanted to add that structure, and I think that has paid off well, because, not only does it let us talk about Kingdom Hearts in hopefully every episode, because we don't always get to talk about Kingdom Hearts, because not that much Kingdom Hearts stuff happens all the time, so we do get to talk about Kingdom Hearts at least a little bit with the Kingdom Hearts news and updates usually, but it also, I think, lets people say, oh, well, I'm not into the topic for this week, but I'll fast forward and listen to the user-submitted questions, because those are always entertaining. So I like to have that kind of structure, I guess. So, Ross, as the former host of the podcast, what do you think about some of the changes that we've made? Do you envy us, or do you think that these changes are absolute crap and we should go back to the old way?
Down with the system. No, I mean, there's some of the stuff that you put in place was some of the stuff I actually wanted to put in place, but I didn't think you'd I suppose is the word. I mean, the whole Kingdom Hearts.
Me personally?
Well, I can't remember. You're going back over a year that I'm trying to remember, but I was thinking when I listened to the first couple after you took over that I was like, I always wanted to do this. I think just generally because you probably talked about games more in podcasts more than I thought I we should have, because, you know, as a Kingdom Hearts site, I thought, okay, well, we'll stick to Kingdom Hearts stuff, but it was really hard to do that, as you say, because even on weekly updates, you can't get Kingdom Hearts news frequently.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of a necessity decision. Like, when you were doing the podcast, like, say, every month, there was usually some Kingdom Hearts stuff to talk about, whereas, like, doing it weekly, like, we would have died out months ago if we were talking about Kingdom Hearts every week.
I mean, to be fair, most of the stuff that you could talk about was maybe 10 to 20 minutes, so I didn't feel like you could really structure podcasts around those entirely. But in terms of stuff, I mean, you were critiquing, I'm putting quotation marks in the air then, critiquing the whole just kind of like a flow of a conversation for an hour. I personally kind of like podcasts like that sometimes. I mean, I do like structure, and I kind of try to keep the structure loose because I knew that there were always going to be topics that we could bring up, but I wanted people to talk about stuff that they wanted to talk about, mainly because that's where I usually find enjoyment in listening to people, is just their experiences, what they think, and just them being chummy around each other, I suppose.
That is actually one thing I'm really staunch on, that, like, as much as we do have a structure, and, like, I make up notes usually before every podcast episode where, like, I break it down by, like, section and everything and have, like, bullet points and everything, I don't share those notes with anyone else.
Yeah.
And having
she doesn't.
having been on, like, other podcasts as guests, I know that sometimes they send you, like, this is everything we're going to be talking about, like, point by point. I will not do that, and I am resolute in that, because I think that it makes it kind of robotic and rehearsed, and I don't like that. So, I mean, it probably is tough, especially on, like, Nick and Cal doing this every single week, to not know, like, what's coming.
I don't need to see your notes, but I would like a general outline of what's going on.
Maybe I'll try to do that, but yeah.
I think, kind of, considering you say that you guys are hosts as a group, that you would probably share that as a group instead of, as usual, Queen Cass on top of the pyramid. So yeah, yeah. Well, I suppose I'm not on staff anymore, so I can say what I like.
Oh wow. At least I have editing power over this. So, starting in episode number 72, Cal joined us as our regular host to replace Yave. So, Cal, do you want to talk a little bit about joining the podcast? Because you kind of came into it, like, when I took it over with Nick and Yave, we kind of talked about these changes together, I think.
I remember. We did. Yes, we did.
Yeah, but
you're
Cal,
remembering correctly.
Yeah, you kind of got thrown into it. So I guess I'll talk to you about your experiences on the podcast and pose that to you.
Sure. Okay. Well, when I figured out that you guys needed a podcast host, I was like, I jumped on that right away.
You did.
But at the same time, after a while, for some reason, I didn't think that you guys were gonna, like, pick me as a host because I was so new. So I guess I didn't really realize what I was doing. But then after I got, like, I guess selected or whatever you want to call it, I was just like, oh God, what have I done? Because, like, sometimes I get really shy when talking, and even though I do my YouTube stuff, that's just kind of talking to myself, and I'm like, how am I gonna hold conversation with 5 other people, or 4, I should say, but yeah, everything just turned out all right, and I got a hang of it after a while, so it's been good.
That is kind of one of the great mysteries of the KH-Vids podcast, that I'm extremely antisocial.
Really? Says the person who's like...
I mean, maybe not antisocial, but I'm very unfriendly, and it's kind of mean in real life. And
I would have just gone for slightly introvert. I wouldn't have gone that far.
Well, you also don't know me in real life.
You don't know me.
You don't know me at all. But yeah, so it's kind of strange that I make a point of talking to sometimes complete strangers every week. And I mean, I do think it is easier. What's that?
Cheers.
Yeah, I think
Make
that...
it sound like we're just like, I talk to these strangers each week. I don't know.
Well, you're letting me get to the point of, I think that it is easier, first of all, having Cal and Nick here every week, because of course I know them and I have a relationship with them. So that, at least, you can kind of feel comfortable with that. But, and then, you know, we have a staff guest who, like, of course I've known Alex for years and I'm sick of talking to him. So...
Me too.
So there is that, but it can be hard sometimes, just like having a member guest and you meet them 5 minutes before the podcast. and suddenly you have to form this relationship with them.
And I feel like I've done that to you guys so many times because when we need a guest, I go to the role playing chats and I'm like, okay guys, who wants to be a guest? And then you guys don't know them because they just hide in the RPA forever and ever.
But that's something that I really love about the podcast too. That like on KH-Vids especially, there are kind of groups, I think, and it's kind of less apparent now, but like there's the RP people, and then like there was the group of people that were always in graphic art, and then like there's of course the people that hang out in the spam zone exclusively, and people that hang out in the gaming section. And so I love, and this is what I love in the podcast about it in general, like getting people to participate, but I kind of like that too, that it lets me talk to members that I maybe would not have before. We've had a lot of people that join up specifically to be on the podcast, which I love, and so it's really thrilling and interesting to meet those new people and be united by this common interest in Kingdom Hearts and me talking every week.
Well, it's funny you say that, because a lot of the time I find that even, well, at least when I was more active, or active as I like to call it, there were a few people who were just like didn't really know much about Kingdom Hearts but were still on the forums because that was sort of the social environment that people got into. It was just people got on or they enjoyed stuff, so they didn't really need to, they didn't have the unity of, oh yeah, I like Kingdom Hearts too. It was like, oh no, I heard about this site, or I had a friend on here and I joined or something. So yeah, I feel like the community's a bigger sort of gravity towards everything that kind of comes together.
Yes, definitely. And I have that feeling about KH-Vids in general, that like we're not maybe the biggest Kingdom Hearts site out there, we're not maybe the most active, but I always feel that we're maybe the most community-oriented one, that we're always about like getting people involved in things and not just being like, oh, here's Kingdom Hearts news and stuff. That I mean maybe that's like conceited to say, and I'm not trying to bash other Kingdom Hearts websites, but that is always something that has been in my mind in working on KH-Vids.
Preach it.
Yes, me. But to kind of open up the question to the group, what is your favorite thing about the KH-Vids podcast currently? So Ross, you can answer this also if you want, although I guess you can if you don't listen to the podcast. So the rest of you, what is your favorite thing about the KH-Vids podcast?
I don't like the tone you're taking here.
I mean, for me, it's mostly just being able to talk to you guys and other people. Like, so it's not nothing. It's not. Well, that came out weird.
The
but
human
like,
contact.
Yes, but like I don't know. It's just fun, kind of just talking about something with other people, and just kind of just sometimes going on topic, sometimes going off topic, and just that entire thing of actually making a podcast and recording a podcast is always kind of fun to me.
Oh yeah, like creating something.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, that's something I guess listeners will not have an idea about, but it's probably still one of my kind of favorite things about the entire podcast is actually making a podcast.
Cal or Alex? I mean, if somebody doesn't say the Moogle Koopo sounds, then I will be severely disappointed in you guys.
The Moogle Koopo sounds are amazing.
Ever. I guess my favorite part is I usually listen to the podcast a lot. I'm kind of an irregular guest, but I usually listen when I'm like working on stuff or doing something, and it's just like the familiar air because I know all three of you obviously for years, and unfortunately Cassie is included in that. But yeah, I just like it's like something to come back to every week and look forward to, like, oh yeah, the podcast is out.
Yeah. The podcast is out. That is actually something that I've always been curious about, though. That obviously, like people in the community are more likely to listen to the KH-Vids podcast because they know who we are, and so they have like a bit of a connection to us already. But I wonder about people that just like kind of stumble across the podcast and sort of and this is something that doesn't just extend to the KH-Vids podcast. This is everything, but like kind of the creator-listener relationship that's formed these days on the internet. That like you see it a lot, I think, with YouTubers, kind of the connection that people feel with a certain YouTuber, even though they've never personally talked to this person ever before. I think it's kind of interesting to see what kind of rapport that they form, even though there is not that direct connection. And so I hope that people that, don't know me personally or have not known me for years on the internet can listen to the podcast and be like, oh, well, here's, what Cassie is saying this week, and here's what libregkd is saying. I guess it's kind of a vanity thing, because I want to be famous. But it's also just kind of interesting to think, like, I'm sort of being listened to by people that I've never met before. It's crazy.
It reminds me of that one time when we were looking at the MediaFire stuff before we realized what was going on with those numbers. And it was like, oh, this podcast has been downloaded like 2,000 times. And I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, it was something crazy. Like, to explain, like, we host our podcasts on MediaFire for downloads, and that's also where they're streamed off of. So every time that somebody visits, like, our homepage and the podcast post is there, it starts, like, automatically downloading the file. That's just how the internet works. And that counts as, like, a download to MediaFire. We did not realize that. So when we checked the MediaFire account and it said, like, 9,000 downloads on our Final Fantasy XV podcast, we're like, holy 9,000 people are listening to the KH-Vids podcast. How are we this famous?
We actually doubted those numbers right off the bat.
Like, we're like, this cannot be right. What did we do? I wish that there was some way, I mean, I need to look into that, a way to, like, track how many people are listening to the KH-Vids podcast.
I mean, if you used a more, I guess, instead of MediaFire, like a more podcast-oriented service.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm always curious about kind of numbers as well, because I like numbers.
Yeah.
And, like, seeing stuff, how, like, just how people are listening to this or what they're listening to and stuff like that.
Yeah. And Cal, what's your favorite thing about the podcast?
Well, I mean, I don't know how conceited this is gonna sound, but
we're doing a podcast episode about the podcast. We're allowed to be conceited.
I guess so. That's a good point. But I feel like before, not a lot of people knew me on the site, just because I kind of hid away in, well, first it wasn't even me hiding away in the role-playing section. It was that I was, like, kind of stalking it at first, and Jane was just like, why don't you come join or something? I see you looking at the Cupid's brew that was back then, and I was just like, okay, somebody noticed me. And I think that's, like, one of the first messages on my profile is Jane being like, hey, you don't need to just read, come join us. And I was like, all right. But yeah, I feel like a lot of people know me now, and I maybe that gets to my head a little bit sometimes, but it's nice to know that, like, I know all of these people, because I've kind of, I keep track of all the sections and stuff, so I always check when new posts are happening, and I like to keep up with what's going on, so I know people kind of by what they post, and I don't actually, like, reply to them or anything, but it's nice to, put, I guess, a face to a name sometimes, and it's nice that maybe people know me now and all that, so it's good.
We're all on the podcast just so we can get internet famous. That's the impression that I'm starting to get from this. So to also ask, conceited questions about the podcast, what's your favorite episode that we've done? And this, I guess, Alex, you can maybe answer this too if you remember that clearly, all the episodes you've been on, but more towards Cal and Nick.
I always enjoy, Ross kind of said this earlier, but I always enjoy the E3 podcast because it's just something I really like talking about. Between the E3 podcast, I don't know which one I like the most.
The ones I'm on.
It's funny because I've been on all the E3 podcasts this podcast has ever had. I was on like the 2000. I think the first one was like 2012 or something like that, or 2011.
Yeah, I think it would have been something like that. Yeah.
But yeah, I generally enjoy those podcasts a lot. Though another one, if I can't narrow it down out of those E3 podcasts, is that I really like the Last of Us spoiler cast we had.
Aww. That might make it.
Just because that I feel we actually talked quite a bit about, like,
the topic.
Well, not so much that we talked a bit about the topic, but the people who were talking about the topic were, like, really talking about the topic in, like, a very an in-depth way that I actually really hope that whenever we get to do another spoiler cast with a game that we're kind of really passionate about, that we get another one of those type of podcasts again.
I actually agree. Last of Us spoiler cast was my favorite episode that we've done as well. Just because, like, that to me is, I wish that we could do that all the time. Like, of course, it's hard to find a game that, like, we're all interested in and have all these feelings about to talk about with it.
Mass Effect.
Mass Effect, it's difficult to do that. So, but, like, Last of Us, has enough nuance that we can do an almost 2-hour podcast episode on it and really talk about stuff like very deeply. And the other game that we did a spoiler cast for was The Order 1886, and that one I felt that we had to spend a lot of time kind of addressing the issues with The Order 1886 and the bad press, and that kind of overshadowed the discussion of the actual game. And that's not necessarily our fault. That's just kind of what happens with The Order 1886, unfortunately. But Last of Us Spoilercast, I agree. Like, that was one of our best in production value, because I have to look at that stuff, because I'm the one that edits these episodes. So just from a production value episode, that one is well put together, which sounds conceited again. But it was just like a really deep conversation that we had, and I really love that.
Yeah, that's why I'm hoping for future games that we can have something like that. Like Life is Strange is about to wrap up finally, so I'm hoping that one will be an additional kind of podcast.
That will be
on that a podcast on that level. And whenever Cal gets around to playing Knights of the Old Republic,
man,
I'm so sorry.
Oh boy.
because I have a lot of feelings about that game.
We all
do. Both the first one and the second one.
Well, you shouldn't. It's not canon anymore.
I know.
I have feelings about it not being canon, Ross.
I know. Cass has been telling me about this because the second one is my favorite game.
Oh my god, it's so good.
Out of the two of those, I feel Knights of the Republic 2 is the best one. Which just seems to be Obsidian's like thing, because I think New Vegas is better than Fallout 3 as well. But yeah, like whenever we get around to doing a podcast about those two games, I think that those would be another good podcast. Though eventually, obviously, the Old Republic will get mentioned in that podcast at some points.
Yeah.
So who knows how that will go down with a certain somebody on this podcast.
I kind of bring up Knights of the Old Republic at every given opportunity, and sometimes I create the opportunities for myself. So, I mean, you don't even have to be listening to the podcast that much to know how fucked up I am over that game. Yeah, but one of my other favorite episodes that we did was the Kingdom Hearts Unchained one, which was, we had Tuminator from KH Decoded on there. I like that just because it's a collaboration in a way in my eyes, so I like that. I think it was one of our strongest episodes in which we did talk exclusively about Kingdom Hearts, and I also don't think that anybody got this, but the album art for that episode of the podcast, I put a lot of work into that. And it's supposed to mimic the Django Unchained cover, like, posters. I feel like nobody got that. Maybe it's because I work in a movie theater, so, like, I'm familiar with all of the movie posters that come out. And the Django Unchained poster, like, always struck me because I really liked the design of it. I've never seen the movie. And so, like, I thought that was so clever of me because, like, we were talking about Kingdom Hearts Unchained Key. And so to do that, and I don't think anybody
Yeah, I didn't get that. I didn't.
So go back and please appreciate my goddamn work.
I mean, I liked it because I have to do I upload the podcast to YouTube and stuff like that. So you always send me the artwork, and you always tell me how much work you put way too much work into the cover art for the podcast. But like I got that aspect of it. I didn't know it was referenced to anything.
Cal and possibly Alex, what were your favorite episodes that we've done?
I have to say, for me, it was probably, we did the value of Let's Plays, I think it was, and I think I had just kind of if I joined on episode 75, then it would be like, this is my 4th podcast, and I feel like, I don't know, for some reason, on the other ones I didn't talk a lot, because I was just like, oh god, what's going on, kind of thing. But for that one, I'm like, this is my time to shine, because I have a YouTube channel, and casual plug right there. But I felt like I could give some good insight on that topic, and I was just like, yes, now I can like show people what I'm made of, because again, a lot of people didn't really know me, and I feel like not talking in the previous ones before that did not help that at all. And then the other one that we did with oh gosh, you just said it and I can't remember his name now.
Tuminator.
Yes, that was a lot of fun because he was cool. It's nice to see other people on the other Kingdom Hearts sites too, that they care about us.
Oh yeah,
as well.
yeah. No, that was definitely great because he had applied to be a member guest on the podcast a while before, and I wanted to wait until we had like a big Kingdom Hearts topic to talk about to have him on, and like he kept saying like, oh yeah, we're big fans of what you guys do at KH Decoded, and like that's always just nice to see. I like it when Kingdom Hearts sites kind of get together and be friends and that kind of thing.
Kumbaya, hand in hand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Alex, do you have an answer to this question, or?
My favorites were all the podcasts that were on because they are extremely high quality because of my presence.
Yeah, that's true.
But I guess it would be. Hold on, I'm still looking up all the podcasts. I guess the glitch episode was one of the favorite ones I was on, and as for one I wasn't on, it was the Mass Effect one, just because I had just finished the trilogy like a week ago, and I had texted Cassie at like 2 a.m. saying I can finally listen to this episode.
And of course I was awake.
Yeah, she's always awake.
Yep, it's a problem.
It's really a problem when I'm texting you at 2 a.m. when it's my time, and it's like 5 over there.
It's a bit of a running joke with everyone. Like, you can text Cassie at whatever hour you want, and she will probably be awake. And I have to tell you guys, I stay up really late to get these podcasts out sometimes. Like, if you notice, the podcasts usually come out, like, Wednesday at, like, 5 a.m., which is my way of saying, like, it's still Tuesday to me, and I've been working on this podcast episode since Tuesday night, so that is something that happens. I should maybe get better at the time.
We all know how dedicated you are.
Yeah, I am. So, to kind of finish us off, I want to look to the future in the KH-Vids podcast and say, what would you like to see us do? And what would you like to see us improve on? You know, like, what topics do you want to see us take on? That kind of thing.
More Kingdom Hearts.
It's so difficult. I always want to talk about Kingdom Hearts, but it's a struggle.
It's bad that we can probably plan out when we're going to talk about Kingdom Hearts because it just aligns with other events.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we'll probably talk more about Kingdom Hearts sometime in the beginning of September and maybe sometime in the beginning of October, and it's like, oh yeah, there's things going on there, so it's more than likely that we're going to get Kingdom Hearts news out of them and not some just random, like, Famitsu interview or something.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, like we were saying with the Last of Us spoiler cast, I want us to do more like that in which we really get to go, like, in depth with something, because I think that's where we, like, really get into the good stuff, the juicy stuff. So
Final Fantasy X.
So, like, yeah, I want to find more things like that. I kind of want to revisit my social activism on the podcast, because early on I was very vocal about a certain game and the representation of women, and that's actually something that we got to go into with The Last of Us that I was really happy about, and I feel I've kind of quieted down on that front lately, and we've never really done... Actually, we did do an episode about women in video games, but I want to do more on that in the future, so I don't know if that's interesting to everyone.
I mean, I'd be up for it.
Yeah.
So, then again, I'm up for anything, so...
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I do also want to see if we could do interviews again. That's something that Sabby in particular was pretty good at arranging. She had an interview with Vincent Carrazza, we did one with Phil Snyder, and I feel like there was somebody else, and I feel terrible that I can't remember, but yeah, so getting interviews with, like, voice actors and kind of important people in video games would be interesting. I don't know if that's maybe above our level just yet, but we can try.
You might also want to invest a bit of money in that.
Yeah, no, I know, that's also a issue.
Yeah. That's why I never did it. I never had funds.
Yeah, so, I mean, it is something to look into, and I think that would be really interesting to do in the future. You guys are also involved in the podcast, so you're allowed to answer this damn question.
Yeah.
And as listeners, it's important to ask, like, what you want to see us do.
Well, I'm expecting, like most other podcasts are doing, for a live show to occur where everyone gets together, you get a stadium full of people, and you just record one.
We tried to do a live thing, by the way.
That didn't work out.
We needed more planning with that.
Yeah.
Because it's weird. Because, so basically what we were going to do, if you don't know, is that we're going to do a live, hey, we're going to talk over the E3 press conferences What happened with that is because we did a test and it worked. It actually worked, surprisingly.
Yeah, and then my laptop decided to shit the bed.
Yeah, and Cassie's stuff is kind of where we set everything up because she had like her entire weird setup of like virtual audio cables everywhere and just anyway, but yeah, her laptop couldn't handle that for some reason, so we ended up having to shelve that idea for another time.
Yeah, it is something that I would love to do, like not just a live podcast where we could kind of get people like interacting with us in real time, but also like a video one, because one thing that we discovered and really wanted to do with the E3 thing is that it's fun to watch us. And that, I mean, again, that sounds so conceited, but we have good facial expressions.
You know that.
I'm beautiful. I own great t-shirts. Like, this is something
that is the one thing about this as well, because we're going to have webcams and all that other stuff, which I found out the one cool thing about this is that I found out I can just use my cell phone as my webcam instead of actually buying a webcam. Yeah, that I hope next year we're able to kind of sort that out, because that is kind of a fun idea kind of to do.
Yeah.
Especially this year, because it would have been great if we had this for Sony's thing, because that was kind of ridiculous on a lot of levels.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, like, hopefully next year we actually have something workable.
Yeah. We need to be able to do, like, live, like, in-person coverage of these things as well. Like, Nick, I know it's always kind of a possibility for you to go to E3 because you do live in California. Obviously, it's more difficult for, like, me and Cal.
Like, I got offered a pass to E3 this year.
We could probably submit for a press pass, given like what
it's so weird, because we were looking into this and now they like offer passes to podcasts like as a specific category, which is like
that would be so cool.
If we all like met up in California to do like live E3, that would be so exciting. That might be like years in the future.
Yeah, but yeah, like this year I got offered a pass, and that I unfortunately had to turn down. It's always fun. Like there's other things around. Like whenever E3 happens, there are other things around that are like E3 but not E3 that are happening around. Like Harmonix had a rock band thing going on at E3, and where their booth was technically outside of the convention center. So like anybody off the street could have just played Rock Band 4 if they wanted to, and
the KH-Vids Podcast gets together to play rock bands.
But yeah, like there's a lot of just kind of stuff that goes around E3 that you technically don't need an E3 pass to do, but a lot of the cool stuff are obviously within the convention center though. So
yeah. And I mean, it is worth noting that the podcast is done like on our own dime. Like, we don't make money from this at all. Like, all of the money from KH-Vids in general goes to the owner, who uses it for whatever he does. But we don't make money from this. So all of like our equipment, that's bought ourselves. Like, we do this on our own time. We do not make money from this. So like that is an issue. And of course we're willing to spend, like, we do spend money on equipment and stuff. And it's like, if one day we maybe like all got together to do some live in-person thing, that would be amazing. But you know, there are barriers.
There are barriers like flight costs.
Yeah. Not to like start the pity party or anything, but yeah, that is just something to note. So yeah, I would love to kind of beef up our event coverage and that kind of thing in the future. How about you, Cal? What do you want to see us do?
I mean, I agree with Nick. Like, the Kingdom Hearts topics are always like a lot of fun, and I've been playing Kingdom Hearts 2, and I've been playing with my friends in a call because I don't know, sometimes I'm just like, and they need to help me. Because I get panicky when I'm playing, especially on critical mode. I don't know what possessed me about 6-7 months ago, when I actually got Kingdom Hearts 2 to be like, let's play critical mode, and then I didn't play it all through the school year, so I've been playing it now, and I'm just like, why? Why did you do this to me, Cal? But I've been replaying it, and for some reason, like, Kingdom Hearts 2 is such a blur for me that I've been like, I don't remember this happening. Is this a new edition? No, Cal, it was always like that. And one of those things were, like, Riku being a party member, and I was just like, wait, what? I would have remembered this, and it was so weird for me. So I feel like now with replaying everything that I can contribute better to conversation about it, and I've just been kind of pulling topics out of my ass, trying to figure out, we could talk about this, because one of the things I think I mentioned in one of the chats was that do the Disney villains have nobodies, because they keep coming back? So it would make sense if they had a Heartless and a nobody or something like that. And I feel like that kind of theorizing is a lot of fun, and I'd like to do that sometime in the future.
That would be cool. And we could even do, like, thinking about it, like a flashback kind of thing, like a Kingdom Hearts 2 spoiler cast, as if Kingdom Hearts 2, like, had just come out, and we wanted to do a big episode about that, and then, like, big, like, theory things. Like, I think we got into kind of the weird theories with the E3 trailer.
Exactly.
That was fun. So, like, I'm totally up for that, to do that. And I think that also we could even do, like you were saying, like, you play Kingdom Hearts while in a call with your friends. Like, if we do, like, kind of like KH-Vids Podcast plays, like, Kingdom Hearts, that would be fun to do together.
It would. It would be lots of fun.
Yeah. So there are a lot of ideas here, and we have the future ahead of us.
Yes. I mean, next week is episode 101.
Yeah, and then after that, 102. And then 103, and then 104.
I'm just establishing we can count right now.
It's important to clarify that sometimes.
I have trouble counting, apparently, because whenever I send Cassie my recording, I'm always like an episode off.
So, I mean, there's so much that we can do and so much that's ahead of us, and I think that we've done some really cool stuff in the past, and that it's great that we can do an episode with that, because we can kind of look at, like, what was really good that we've done before and what was bad, and kind of go from there. And so, in that vein, with our 100th episode, we want feedback from you guys, too. We want to know, like, what have been your favorite episodes, and what do you want to see us do as a listener, because, of course, we want to produce content, not just that we're proud of and that we like making, but that other people are going to find interesting. And it's always the best, like, guiding light to know, like, what episodes people like, so that we can do things similar to that and kind of go off of that threshold. And, like, any of these ideas that we have thrown out just now, if you find them interesting, definitely do let us know, and let us know so that maybe you can participate in it, because that is something that we always have had in mind with the KH-Vids podcast, and that we probably should improve on in the future, is getting member guests and having people here with us and getting people personally involved in the podcast, because that is so important to us, and that is something that we want to do. So please do let us know, like, what you guys want out of the podcast, because it's the KH-Vids podcast, not the Misty, Cal, and Nick podcast.
or the Misty podcast.
Okay, you need to stop with the dictator thing. It's not applicable anymore.
Yeah, she has been interested in seeing me and Cal do a podcast.
Yes, that is actually something that I really want to see, because, you know, okay, maybe the dictator thing is still a little bit there, because I do host the episodes, and I think that, Nick, actually, you have hosted an episode, and I think Yave did one as well, and so, like, maybe one day we'll just do, like, Cal hosts this week, and Nick hosts this week, and that kind of thing, but I would also be interested to see what happens just when I'm not here.
The problem with that would be that you always edit the podcast, and you don't allow other people to edit the podcast. So I have no experience whatsoever with editing a podcast, and I'm going to assume Cal doesn't either.
I mean, I've edited YouTube videos, and that's, like, completely different, but I mean, the thing, I could edit it, it's just, what do I leave in, and what do I not leave in? That would kind of, I feel like that would mess me up a little bit.
It's hard to decide sometimes. It's like this whole process of, like, okay, how long is this going on? How long is the episode? Like, how many minutes would we lose if I took this out? How interesting is this to other people? It's tough. It's really, really difficult to do that.
I mean, when I started doing it, I didn't have any audio editing ability. I mean, I think I had edited a Kingdom Hearts video once.
Wow.
But I was so young. And yeah, I think it's just something you kind of get used to. I mean, it will be choppy to begin with, but it's not impossible.
Yeah. I'm not saying it would be impossible, but that first, like, if I'm going to be like, oh, here's just a podcast without Cass because she wasn't available this week, you would notice a changing quality. I will say
it's a learning process too, though. Like, you know,
need to overthrow her. You just need to do it. Just take the reins.
If you listen back to, like, the podcast when me, Nick, and Yave first started, like, there is definitely a difference in the audio quality, and that's not just like, oh, we got better microphones, but it's also I learned how to edit things. And, you know, so now, like, I did not start with any experience in audio editing or anything like that. Like, I am kind of tech savvy, but I still did not know anything. And I'm still figuring everything out and muddling my way through. But yeah, so it would be interesting just to see what happens. Yeah, so like I said, definitely do let us know what you've thought of the last 100 episodes and what you want to see us do in the future, because that's so important. And now we will get into user-submitted questions. To submit a question to the KH-Vids Podcast, all you have to do is fill out the form linked to every episode of the podcast or send an email to podcast@KH-Vids.net. The questions can be directed towards the host in particular or the group in general. So the first question comes from Graxy, and he asks, you're sitting alone somewhere doing something of your choosing when suddenly someone or something shines a flashlight directly into your eyes. You don't know where it's coming from, but it's really annoying. What do you do to fix this?
Close my eyes.
Move? Put on my sunglasses?
Run wildly towards it? Oh no, don't walk into the light. Sorry, got that round the wrong way. So, could you stop that, please? I don't know. Yes, that. Yeah, that's my fun answer.
It does actually remind me of, alien observation.
I was just gonna say.
Yeah. I'm glad you're there with me, Cal.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, the first thing I would think is I'm being abducted by aliens, and I'd probably just sit there and wait for the light to bring me, up, I don't know, to their spaceship, I guess. Up to
except
the sky.
that death is coming.
More likely, it would be quickly dodge the car that's careering towards you. Then, hello, aliens, take me.
Yeah, actually, that would probably be my reaction if I was being abducted by aliens. Please take me.
I don't like it here.
Okay, so next question is from Scarred Nobody, or Tummer, and this is a personal attack against me, but I'll let it go. I live in a small town, which means that I've had to be careful on who I date because I don't want to accidentally run into any surprise relatives. It's that freaking small. So how is it that two people who, I would say purposefully, live on opposite ends of the freaking galaxy that ends up kissing each other be brother and sister? And does it make it weirder if the sister's always known? Tummer personally tweeted me about this, his problem with, in Star Wars, Luke and Leia ending up to be brother and sister. And what I don't think that he understands, because he's not a Star Wars fan like, say, I am, is that the Force exists. And the Force is the hand-wavy explanation that you can use for anything that happens.
The easiest way to explain away plot.
It's
just like
it is. The Force brought Luke and Leia together because they needed to fulfill the prophecy and they needed to reconnect with their dad. The Luke and Leia kiss, though. We were talking a little bit about this, me and him. First of all, he referenced it as making out, and they did not make out. I would say that they smooched at best. And secondly, Leia was clearly doing it just to make Han jealous. We all know that Han and Leia are the true OTP of Star Wars. Do not argue that at all. And the Leia has always known comment, it's not made as, Luke saying, hey, Leia, you're my sister, and her being like, yeah, bitch, you didn't know that? It's made as, I think I've always kind of known that in the back of my head. I think.
As you do.
What?
As you do.
Well, yeah, I think that's just an important distinction to make.
Yeah, I mean, because there's always the things where you're not entirely sure, but you just feel like it's the case.
Exactly. And that is what happened with Luke and Leia. So stop. It's funny. I make fun of it too. The Luke and Leia kiss, I think is even better knowing that they are brother and sister. Because, of course, when it happens in Empire Strikes Back and you first see it.
Okay.
I'm into incest. No.
It's even better when we know they're brother and sister.
But, when it happens and you don't know that they are brother and sister, then it's oh, it's a good moment. But when it happens when they're brother and sister, you're like, oh, it's this is ew. And it's good. It's just it changes the scene in a fun way, I think. And it is a fun scene. That's probably one of the funnest scenes in Star Wars. So stop trying to ruin Star Wars for me, because it's never going to happen.
So was there a question in there somewhere? Or I can't remember.
Or just a comment.
He's saying, how does it happen? And also he added at the end, ain't I a stinker? And the answer to that is yes. So okay. that is my Star Wars rant for the day. And I'm gonna finish this off with a table topics. If you don't know, table topics is the condescending gift that my stepmom gave me. It's a little card game that just has things to talk about on it. So let's shuffle them up and drop them all over my desk, which is what just happened.
And pick up one we've already answered.
Yep, probably. Honestly, the stack isn't that big, so we may have, like, answered all of these. Okay, we've answered that one already. Here we go. Okay. When you receive 2 invitations at the same time, how do you decide which one to accept?
Is it to the same event?
I'm guessing, like, different ones, like, at the same time. Like, which one do you go to?
You've been invited for tea and scones at Miss Havisham's, but you've also been invited to a rock concert with your friends. Who do you go to?
Obviously Miss Havisham's, because she truly understands how bullshit men are, so that would be a lot of fun. Which is a Great Expectations reference if you guys aren't familiar with it.
If you don't read.
Yeah, if you don't read or watch the many movies. Yeah, I just like to address the fantasy world in which I'm invited to not 1, but 2 things. So this isn't really a problem that I run into in my life.
Same here. Like, I mean, if honestly, if I was getting invited to 2 things by 2 different people, I'd probably just go to the one that interests me the most. Like, there's nothing here besides, like, hey, you got invited to 2 things. Like, I could be invited to some, I don't know, dinner or something, and that wouldn't be interesting. But, like, I don't know, like, there's, like, nothing for me to work with in this.
Well, like, I guess some people would say, like, whatever I was invited to first.
Nah, screw that.
Yeah.
Screw that.
Depends how bad the first thing you invite to is, really. if the substitute is better, then you try and weasel your way out the first one.
Especially if, like, you haven't, like, committed to any of these things yet, then it's like, let me just go to the thing that interests me more.
Part of the problem with this also is that it's difficult to get me to do anything because, like, you know...
I've tried.
Yeah. People say, like, oh, you know, like, you want to go out and do something. And it's like, yeah, we could do that. Or we could also, like, stay home and play video games. And that is an option. And so that's kind of what I end up doing.
Oh, good. Very hard question, this, isn't it?
I prefer always, like, staying indoors and doing nothing to doing things. So I will probably go to the invitation that is closest to that. Also, I'm, again, to go with the, like, unfriendly antisocial thing, I don't really like to be around strangers. Like, I like invitations where people say, like, this is where we're going and this is what we're doing and this is who we're doing it with. So
you want the entire thing planned out in the invitation.
Pretty much, yes. So, like, I will sometimes gravitate towards things that are like that. I don't like the, like, possibility of anything happening.
Well, you are a bit of a control freak, so it's not surprising.
I like to think that these are just quirks of my character.
You're a very quirky person.
Oh, you know, that's what they said about, like, all those serial killers.
All right, okay. So, if we don't have a productive answer to this question...
I mean, I guess, like, for me it would be... it's kind of, I don't know, in order of importance. Like, if it's somebody's birthday, like, your birthday only comes around, like, once a year. And so, if somebody was like, hey, you know, let's go to the pool, or it was somebody's birthday party, like, I'd probably pick their birthday, because, you know, we can go swimming anytime, bro, okay? But, you know, your birthday only comes around every so often, right? And kind of the rule with birthdays is that if you're invited to somebody's birthday party, that they, like, I don't know, this is how things work in my mom's head, but if you're invited to somebody's party, then they'll be invited to back to yours or something. And if so you don't go, you can't invite them back because, like, it's not even anymore, and it's so weird. But I'm kind of... I'm torn with this question because it started to make me think, because one of my friends, he's at summer camp and he's not coming back until, I'm not sure which week it is, but I'm afraid that the only time that we're going to be able to hang out is the same weekend of Fan Expo, and if that happens, I'm not sure what I'm going to do, so that question was just like, oh, okay, because now I'm worrying about that. But yeah, I guess it how badly do you want to go to said event? Because if it's just something regular, like, you can do that anytime, but if it's something like special,
No, yeah, that
or you
is
can
a
just
problem.
go to both somehow.
Like, and it's hard to, like, cancel plans on people. Like, when E3 was going on...
No, that was your reaction to that was probably one of my favorite things about E3.
What was it?
It was you just, like, come to the realization that, oh, no, did I...
Yeah, schedule a vacation during E3. But, like, happily, my boyfriend was understanding and knew that E3 was happening and I had to stay indoors for, like, 3 days. But, like, other people were saying, like, oh, Cassie, could you, like, pick up a shift for me at work? And I don't know how to phrase it to people and say, no, I can't because I need to stay home and watch video games happen.
That was exactly me, though, because I told you guys that I took off a day of school.
Yeah.
Like 3 weeks in advance, and I didn't really know how to explain to my teachers that that was happening. So they were like, "Oh, where are you going tomorrow?" And I'm just like, "I'm on a trip." I wasn't sure what to say. And with my media arts teacher, I was just like, "Well, E3's tomorrow, and I'm part of an online thing, and we're doing coverage." And he was like, "Oh, that's cool," but my older teacher, I don't think he would have understood, so I was just like, I'm going on vacation, see you guys later, kind of thing. And it's so weird having to say that, because it was, I don't know, it was an experience to be like, yeah, I have to stay home from school because of the podcast. I mean, and it wasn't bad or anything, it was such an odd thing to explain. And
yeah. If it makes you feel better, though, Cal, when I was 11, I took an entire day off of school to get Kingdom Hearts 2 when it released. So that is something I did. That's probably a less legitimate reason than watching E3, because I could have just done it after school.
That's what I'm hoping for, though, for Kingdom Hearts 3, that it comes out near, like, a holiday, so I can just lock myself in my room and play it during the winter vacation or whatever, and I hope that, or the summer vacation, or any time with a vacation, because I don't want to, like, I know there are going to be those people that finish the game in a day and see the ending and all that stuff, and I don't want to be left behind, man.
I don't know if it makes anyone feeling better, but I missed E3 completely this year, which was shocking to me, but work does beckon. So if we're talking about importance of, like, which invitation you take the one where you're kind of working, I
making
suppose.
money, contributing to society.
Yeah, doing something with my life.
I contribute on occasion.
I don't think that slinging popcorn to the residents of my town constitutes as contributing to society, but, whatever pays the bills. Yep. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about community news and projects. Voting has started on the KH-Vids User Awards. Alex, would you like to talk a little bit about that?
The real reason why we had you on this podcast.
Voting for Cycle 2 of the KH-Vids.Net User Awards has started. So pop on down there and get your reading glasses on, because you're going to be reading a lot if you want to vote legitimately, which I hope you will.
I just pick random things. Isn't that what you're supposed to do?
Well, you could. But I'd hate you for it.
I vote to intentionally tie the polls.
You're one of those people.
I'm not gonna lie, that last year when I didn't really know many of the people, I was just like, hey, that person's a staff member, I should vote for them. Or was like whoever was in the lead. And I feel like I'm not the only one, because I mean, not that you guys don't like legitimately deserve, but I know a lot of people vote for the staff just because they're staff. No offense to you guys or anything, because I feel like you do deserve most of the awards. But I'm not alone. Don't judge me.
Suddenly, the KH-Vids User Awards are revealed to just be like the staff giving themselves awards.
See, now I know how you got a job on the podcast.
The User Awards used to like get like crazy with the voting, though. Like one year, a lot of people were campaigning for cutest couple, and it got a little out of hand. So like, I'm kind of glad that things have calmed down.
Yeah.
Well, sort of. I mean, in the role-playing section, we're kind of you know.
Good, because it's always been hard to get the RPers, like, involved in the user awards, so I'm glad that they're, like, turning up this year.
Yeah.
Because we don't set a fire in the RP arena.
Exactly. Because I think Plums was there when I was talking about that a little bit, and I'm just like, all right. I don't know if the awards got like that crazy that people were like fighting or anything.
Oh, they
but
did.
I was just like, oh, okay. Well, that makes me feel a little bit better that I'm not the cause of like mass drama or anything like that.
Yep, and then the last community news that I want to bring out involves somebody who is here right now. Nick has been promoted to administrator! Yay!
I was so excited when I saw that.
He has basically been doing the work of an administrator for a while. It seems only right to, give him the blue name to match it. And it's so much easier to match icons to it than the purple, so, like, that is...
I was never a fan of the purple, so...
I was here when we chose the user group colors, and I was very adamant that Supermods should be blue because I wanted to be blue, but I lost that victory, and I mean, I'm kind of happy now because I can just sit as an administrator and be blue forever, but...
I'd say I like the purple, but I wouldn't past Cassie to demote me right after this
I was
podcast
about to
is done.
say, do you want me to demote you? But yeah, so congratulations to Nick. It is well-deserved, and it just has more blueberries running around, which is always nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Always fun.
Yeah. So is there anything else you guys want to plug, or can we finish
I just have the Game of the Month for August that just got finished up. Apparently Steins Gate won.
I mean, I don't know anything about Steins Gate, but I know that for some reason people are really excited about this game.
Yeah, I mean, I've followed it a bit. It's weird because Steins Gate originally came out in 2009 in Japan.
Isn't
the
it
Xbox...
an anime though?
Yeah, it got turned into an anime. It originally came out as a visual novel. That oddly, I don't know. This developer has always been weird, but Steins Gate came out on as an Xbox 360 exclusive in Japan.
What?
Yeah. That's kind of like all their games, to be quite honest. Like, even their newest, I think it was Psycho Pass, that was an Xbox One exclusive in Japan. But anyway,
and they're still in business? Like...
Yeah, I mean, eventually what they do is that they port it to everything and everything under the sun. But this is the first time that the visual novel is actually getting localized on a console in North America, which it's coming out on the PS3 and Vita sometime the end of this month. So there's that to look forward to. I'm actually kind of interested in it because I've always wanted to try it out, but obviously it being a Japanese exclusive kind of made that hard. The runner-ups this month are One Piece Pirate Warrior 3, which...
You know, we're scraping the bottom of the barrel when a One Piece game is...
Yeah, it's not even just a One Piece game. It's a One Piece, like, Dynasty Warriors game, which, like, that's taking something that's kind of and then, like...
Putting shit over it.
I will have nothing bad said about the Warriors games.
Well, it's not my fault you have bad taste.
I don't know if you played the recent ones, but they show signs of ingenuity and creativity. It's just they really do stick to an old formula. Anyway,
Ross is
Kingdom
just
Hearts.
a slut for like Chinese history.
It's like my biggest thing with even the upcoming Dragon Quest game. That's the Dragon Quest Heroes, which is like a Dynasty Warriors type game, despite the fact that Square Enix are trying their hardest to say no, it's really just an action RPG. The other runner-up is Until Dawn, which is like...
It's kind of like a B-movie slasher flick.
Yeah, it's like, yes, it is like Heavy Rain, except...
Whoa, maybe not.
It's like one of those like really cheesy slasher horror movies, except as a Heavy Rain thing. And they've been talking about like, oh, there's... like multiple endings. You get to choose who in this group of teenagers get to die or survive based on how you handle things. And
wow, this sounds like a game for the mentally stable.
I mean, you're playing as the people, the characters.
Yeah, you're not the killer. You're trying to escape.
Yeah, you're trying to escape the killer. And,
okay,
but
I was
obviously
afraid you were the killer.
But obviously, depending on if you react to the person who is trying to kill you well enough, you will get killed or you will survive. But yeah, that's like, those are the 3 games. My personal game for next month didn't make it in, but I'm really excited for the Calxiyn, the Dimensional, which is... But
that's like an indie that...
Yeah, it is, but it's so good. It's so good. This is the first game I've ever actually pre-ordered on the PS4. It's weird having a little timer underneath the little tile on the list of games of like, hey, it's going to be active in a day.
We really should just have like game of the month and then like indie game that you need to play according to Nick of the month.
Yeah. Because I mean Calxiyn is something that I've actually been paying attention to for like almost 2 years now. That it's finally getting released, so I'm kind of really happy about that.
I could be wrong here, but is it this month where everybody's gone to the Rapture's coming out?
Yes, that is coming out the 11th. That's another game that I've sort of had an interest in, but I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to get it right away or not.
Fair enough. I from what I've seen of it, it's pretty much the most accurate thing of Britain I've ever seen, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, it does.
And this is of course the countryside, not London. But yeah, I don't quite know what it's about, but it's so vague and mysterious that it kind of interests me.
Yeah, it's made by the same people who made Dear Esther.
Yeah, I played Dear Esther, and I hope it's better than Dear Esther.
Yeah. I mean, from what they're saying, it's I mean, if you want to be derogatory, it's one of those walking simulator type games where you're just kind of going around an environment and you're trying to piece together a puzzle, or not even a puzzle, piece together the story based on kind of the environment that you're interacting with.
I like that stuff, so yeah. I'm probably definitely going to get it.
I'm interested in it. I'm just not sure if I want to get it right away or not, because games cost money.
Indeed.
But yeah, that's coming out, and there's actually quite a bit of stuff coming out this month. It's kind of weird that we're finally getting out of the summer drought of games, and we're getting into like, hey, everything's coming out again, and then September comes around, and then even more stuff's coming out, and then we're in the holidays, and then that's when like nobody cares that everything's coming out on the same day. Let's just do it. But yeah, there's quite a bit coming out in August, which is a nice change of pace from the previous summer months. So look forward to more games.
Okay, so that finishes off episode number 100 of the KH-Vids Podcast. There are a lot of ways for you guys to get participating in the KH-Vids Podcast. The first of which, like I said, is submitting questions to the KH-Vids Podcast, which you can do by filling out the form with every episode of the podcast or send an email to podcast@KH-Vids.net. You can submit to be a member guest on the KH-Vids Podcast, once again, by filling out the form linked to every episode of the podcast. All you need is a Skype account, a microphone, and headphones. And you can submit a topic to the KH-Vids Podcast, telling us what you want to hear us talk about, that kind of thing. So please let us know what spoiler casts you want to hear us do, or just things that are on your mind. And then finally, you can leave us a comment on every podcast episode letting us know what you thought about the episode. This week, we really want to hear what have been your favorite episodes of the KH-Vids Podcast. What do you want us to see us in the future? That kind of thing. So please do interact with us and share in the celebration of this great achievement, 100 episodes of the KH-Vids Podcast. And finally, I think we all just want to say thank you guys for listening to the podcast and supporting the podcast and participating in it like you do. We really could not do this if we did not have that. And so it really is just a big heartfelt thank you, because it's thanks to you guys that we did get to episode number 100. So thank you. So thank you all for listening, and have a Kingdom Hearts day.